Fluency in English without memorizing vocabulary. Fluency in English is something that many people aspire to achieve. However, the path to fluency often feels long, frustrating, and overwhelming. I remember when I was just a young student, much like you, hoping to speak English fluently. The desire to speak without hesitation was strong. But over time, I realized that the key to mastering a language is not to memorize endless vocabulary lists, but to embrace a more natural, intuitive approach to learning new words and phrases. Through my own journey of language acquisition and through discussions with other learners and educators, I discovered that the process of learning English vocabulary can be both enjoyable and effortless. The truth is, memorizing words and forcing them into your brain does not guarantee long-term retention or practical usage. What you need is a method that taps into your natural learning instincts and aligns with how your brain is wired to absorb new information. In this article, I will share several insights and techniques that will help you acquire English vocabulary naturally and efficiently. This approach is not about forcing yourself to memorize new words, but about discovering a more intuitive and enjoyable way to learn. By the end, I hope to show you that learning English vocabulary does not need to be a stressful task, but instead it can be a fun and engaging part of your journey toward fluency. 1. Forget memorization. Start understanding. When I first began my English learning journey, I too resorted to memorizing lists of vocabulary words. I believed that the more words I could cram into my head, the better my English would become. But soon enough, I found myself struggling to recall these words when speaking or writing. Even worse, I couldn't use them in real conversations. It became evident that simply memorizing a word was not enough. It lacked meaning and relevance in my life. This is when I decided to change my approach, understanding words in context rather than memorizing them. The key to acquiring vocabulary naturally is to see words as part of real-life situations. For instance, when you encounter the word delightful, think about a situation where you might describe something as delightful. Perhaps you were at a wedding and the ceremony felt delightful, or you had an enjoyable experience at a restaurant where the food was delightful. When you learn words in context, your brain is far more likely to remember them. This is because you are connecting the words to experiences, emotions, and images that are meaningful to you. This makes the word much more memorable than simply learning its definition from a textbook. Your goal is to encounter a word in various contexts so your brain forms a strong connection with it. Over time, you will begin to notice the word delightful in various books, conversations, or even on social media, and it will become a natural part of your vocabulary. 2. Stories are your best friend. Another method that I found incredibly useful in learning vocabulary is through stories. Humans have been telling stories for millennia, and for good reason. Stories are an engaging way to convey information and emotions. This same principle can be applied to learning vocabulary. When you read stories, whether it be a novel, article, or even a short story, the words and phrases you encounter are embedded in meaningful contexts. You are not simply learning the word courageous. You are learning about a character who demonstrates courage, faces challenges, and overcomes obstacles. Through this process, your brain begins to associate the word courageous with real-life actions, emotions, and experiences, making it much easier to recall and use in conversations. A great way to start learning vocabulary through stories is by reading graded readers, books designed for language learners, with vocabulary and grammar tailored to your level. You can also listen to stories through podcasts or YouTube channels that tell stories in English. Each time you come across a new word, do not merely look up its meaning. Pay attention to how the word is used in the story, what emotions or actions it describes, and how it fits into the larger context of the narrative. In my experience, learning through stories was a breakthrough. It transformed the process of learning into an enjoyable journey and allowed me to see words in action rather than simply memorizing them. 3. Use visual associations to strengthen your memory. One of the most powerful techniques I utilized in my language learning was creating visual associations. Our brains are incredibly adept at remembering images and experiences. When we try to memorize a word without connecting it to something familiar, it can easily slip away from our memory. However, when we pair a word with a mental image, our brain is far more likely to retain it. Let's consider the word euphoria as an example. Instead of merely memorizing the word and its definition, try to visualize a moment when you felt pure happiness. Perhaps it was the moment you graduated or when you spent time with loved ones. Connect that moment of joy to the word euphoria. This mental association will make the word much more memorable. In the future, when you encounter the word euphoria, the image of joy and happiness will come to mind. You can apply this strategy to any word. If you're learning the word meticulous, think of someone who is extremely careful and pays attention to detail. Perhaps you know someone in your life who is known for their meticulous nature, such as a friend or colleague who always organizes things perfectly. This personal association will cement the word in your memory, making it easier to recall when needed. 4. Immerse yourself in English. One of the most effective ways to learn vocabulary is by immersing yourself in English. You do not have to be in an English-speaking country to immerse yourself. There are countless ways to surround yourself with the language every day. I found that surrounding myself with English language media, such as books, movies, TV shows, and music, helped me absorb new vocabulary without much effort. For instance, if I wanted to learn more about everyday vocabulary, I would watch English language TV shows or films. As I watched, I paid attention to how the characters spoke and the words they used in different situations. The beauty of immersion is that you are not only learning isolated vocabulary, but you are also learning how words are used in authentic conversations and how they interact with other words to convey meaning. You can also participate in language exchange programs or conversation clubs, where you practice speaking English with native speakers or other learners. The more you speak and listen to English, the more vocabulary you will naturally pick up without even realizing it. It's almost like learning by osmosis. You're surrounded by the language, and it gradually becomes a natural part of your understanding. 5. Learn vocabulary through interests and passions. Another suggestion I would offer is to learn vocabulary through your personal interests and passions. When you learn vocabulary related to something you are passionate about, the process becomes much more engaging and relevant to your life. For example, if you love cooking, start by learning the English names of ingredients, cooking utensils, techniques, and recipes. The vocabulary will be far easier to remember because it is connected to something you are deeply interested in. Alternatively, if technology fascinates you, dive into articles or videos about the latest gadgets, software, and innovations. The vocabulary you learn will be not only useful, but also exciting because it is related to something you enjoy. This approach makes vocabulary learning feel less like a chore and more like an enjoyable, fun activity. When you are genuinely invested in a topic, you are naturally more motivated to learn the related vocabulary. You will find that you enjoy the process and will remember the words much more easily. 6. Repetition is key, but don't overdo it. Although memorizing vocabulary in the traditional sense is not always effective, repetition still plays an important role in language learning. The key is not to overdo it, but to review vocabulary periodically to reinforce it in your memory. I recommend using the technique of spaced repetition, where you review new words at increasing intervals. For instance, you might review a word the day after you first learn it, again after 3 days, then a week later, and so on. This approach ensures that the words remain fresh in your memory and do not fade away over time. You can use language apps such as Anki, which are designed to help you practice new vocabulary using spaced repetition. Alternatively, you can create your own review system by scheduling vocabulary reviews every few days. The goal is to keep words active in your memory, ensuring they do not slip away after a brief encounter. 7. Make vocabulary learning fun. Finally, do not forget to make vocabulary learning enjoyable. Try engaging in word games such as crossword puzzles or Scrabble to test your vocabulary knowledge. You can also challenge yourself to use a new word in conversation every day, or write short stories using several new words you have learned. The more creative and playful you are with the language, the easier it will be to remember words. Conclusion: a natural, fun, and effective approach to vocabulary learning. Learning English. Vocabulary need not be stressful or tedious. By learning words in context, telling stories, using visual associations, immersing yourself in English, and practicing vocabulary through your passions, you will discover that vocabulary acquisition becomes a natural, effortless process. Remember, language learning is not about memorizing long lists of words. It is about connecting words to your experiences, emotions, and daily life. By employing these techniques, you will not only expand your vocabulary, but also gain a deeper understanding of how words function in real-world communication. Take the pressure off and enjoy the journey. Fluency will come with time, practice, and patience. By embracing these methods, you will find yourself speaking English with confidence and ease. Keep learning, keep practicing, and most importantly, have fun along the way. And don't forget, if you found this lesson helpful, like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more English learning tips. See you in the next lesson.